2018. I was working for a small manufacturing company on the outskirts of Bielefeld, Germany. I was 26, fresh out of a rough breakup, and honestly, just grateful to have a stable job, even if it was boring as hell. We made custom metal parts for bigger companies. My job was in the quality control department, which meant long hours at a desk checking reports, occasionally walking the floor, and spending way too much time in the tiny office kitchen. The kitchen was the heart of the building. If you wanted coffee, water, a microwave, a place to complain about management, it all happened there. It was a narrow room, one long counter with a sink, a cheap coffee machine, a kettle, a crusty microwave, and a tall white fridge that hummed louder than it should have. There were two little tables squeezed into the corner, and the bulletin board everyone pretended to read. We all stored our food in that same fridge. Label your Tupperware if you were paranoid, or just hope people respected your stuff. It was normal. For the first year, there was nothing weird about that kitchen, except maybe how disgusting the sponge always looked. Then people started getting sick. It was slow at first. One guy in assembly, Martin, went out on medical leave. Rumor was his kidneys were failing, which was insane because he was only in his 30s and in decent shape. A month later, Claudia from accounting collapsed at her desk and had to be taken out by ambulance. She came back 2 months later, but she walked like someone twice her age. The official explanation floating around was stress or environmental exposure, but we all knew that was bullshit. These were random people in different departments, doing different things. It didn't add up. I didn't think it had anything to do with the kitchen until the day I noticed my lunch. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I'd actually gotten up early to make myself a proper sandwich instead of buying something from the vending machines. 2 slices of multigrain bread, turkey, cheese, lettuce, tomato, a bit of mustard. I wrapped it tight in foil, proud of my tiny act of adulthood, and stuffed it in the fridge when I got in. Around 12:30, I went to grab it. The kitchen was empty, which was weird. Usually at least one person would be in there microwaving leftovers. I opened the fridge, reached for my sandwich, and my hand froze. The foil was different. I couldn't have explained it to anyone else, but I knew. I always folded my foil tightly, pressing the corners flat. This was crumpled, looser, like someone had opened it and closed it again in a hurry. I unwrapped it slowly. The sandwich looked fine. No bites, no obvious marks. But the cheese slice was slightly off-center. I stared at it way longer than anyone ever should stare at a sandwich. Eventually, I told myself I was being paranoid. I put it back, grabbed a coffee instead, and pretended I wasn't suddenly disgusted by my own lunch. That night, my stomach hurt so badly, I ended up lying on the bathroom floor for an hour. Diarrhea, cramps, the works. I told myself I'd just caught a bug. The next day, I didn't bring food. Over the next few weeks, more people got sick. Quietly. Someone from packaging, one of the welders. No one died, but a lot of them didn't come back. I stopped seeing familiar faces at the coffee machine. I didn't think it was connected to the fridge until I saw Eric's lunchbox. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and found my coworker Eric standing in front of the fridge with his lunchbox in his hands, just staring at it. "You good?" I asked, pouring myself some coffee. He didn't answer right away. Then he held up his container. "Did you touch this?" I shook my head. "No, man. I just got here." He opened it slowly. Inside were 2 slices of bread, ham, and some pickles. Nothing strange, except the top slice of bread was slightly lifted. like someone had peeked underneath and put it back. We both just stood there, looking at it. "You see this?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. "I've seen it with mine too." We exchanged a long glance. No jokes, no laughter, just this heavy realization hanging between us. After that, more of us started bringing it up. Someone's yogurt lid looked like it had been peeled back and pressed down again. Someone else's Tupperware lid wasn't quite sealed the way they'd left it. It was all subtle, but too consistent to ignore. Our manager, Lucas, brushed it off when we mentioned it at a meeting. "If you're worried about hygiene, just don't share food," he said. "And maybe stop accusing your coworkers of stealing bites." It wasn't about stealing bites. A week later, Claudia pulled me aside in the hallway. Her face was pale, her eyes sunken. "Do you still use the kitchen fridge?" she asked in a low voice. "Sometimes," I lied. "Don't," she said flatly. "I started getting sick around the same time I noticed my food moved. My doctor says it's like I've been exposed to some kind of toxin. Heavy metals, maybe. They can't figure out how." My hands went cold. "You told anyone here?" She nodded bitterly. "Lucas says it's occupational stress." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept going back to that fridge, to the way the foil had been crumpled, to the way Eric's bread had been lifted, to the fact that the only common space we all shared was this tiny kitchen. The next morning, I came in early. Earlier than anyone else. The building was dark and blue in the winter light. Only the emergency lights were on. I walked straight to the kitchen. The door was cracked open just a little. That was my first warning. The second was the sound. A faint rustling, like foil, or plastic, or paper bags being opened and closed. Stopped outside the doorway and peered in. Someone was standing with their back to me at the counter. They were tall, shoulders slightly hunched. I recognized the company-issued navy blue work jacket, but not the person from behind. Their hands were moving quickly over 2 lunchboxes on the counter. I couldn't see what exactly they were doing, just that they were focused. Very focused. "Hello?" I said. They froze. Slowly, very slowly, they turned their head just enough to look at me over their shoulder. It was Uwe. Uwe worked in maintenance. Quiet guy, mid-50s, always alone. I'd seen him fixing lights in the hallway, replacing a pipe in the bathroom, but never really thought about him outside of that. Now he was staring at me, one gloved hand hovering above an open lunchbox. On the counter beside it, there was a small metal vial. My eyes dropped to it instinctively. It was unmarked. A dull gray cylinder with a screw-on cap. Something about it, the way he'd set it there so neatly, made my skin crawl. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sounding small even to me. He blinked once. Then he smiled. It was the wrong kind of smile. Too slow, too controlled, like he'd practiced it in the mirror. "Just cleaning up a spill," he said, his accent a little thicker than usual. "Someone's sauce leaked." We both looked down at the lunchboxes. Neither of them had any sauce. I took a step back without meaning to. I was just grabbing coffee," I muttered, forcing a laugh. "Didn't think anyone else came in this early." He didn't move. "Some of us come in earlier than others." For a second, his eyes drifted to the fridge, then back to me. I made a stupid choice then. Instead of confronting him or running straight to HR, I tried to play it off. I grabbed the coffee pot with shaking hands, poured myself half a mug, and got the hell out of there. At my desk, my heart was hammering so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. I opened my email and started to type something to Lucas, then deleted it. What was I supposed to say? Hey boss, I saw Uwe standing over people's food with a mystery vial at Sips in the morning. Pretty sure he's poisoning us. It sounded insane. Instead, I went to Phil, our building's security guy. I knew he had access to the cameras. We didn't have much, but there was one pointed down the hallway outside the kitchen. Can you pull footage from the last few weeks around the kitchen? I asked, trying to sound casual. There's been some theft. He raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. He scanned through the recordings, speeding up until the days blurred by. Eventually, we saw it, over and over and over again. Early mornings, late nights, whenever no one else was around. Uwe walking into the kitchen alone, opening the fridge, taking out containers, unwrapping sandwiches, leaning over them for a few seconds, then closing everything back up and putting it neatly away. Same careful movements every time. Sometimes there was a glint of something small in his hands, reflecting the fluorescent lights, but the resolution was too bad to see clearly. Phil swore under his breath. What the hell? I didn't say anything. I just watched my own lunchbox appear on the screen one day, watched Uwe open it, tilt his head, and do something, then close it again like nothing had happened. We went to management with the footage. To their credit, once they saw it, things moved fast. The police were called. Uwe was quietly escorted out of the building that afternoon. They searched his locker, then his car, then his apartment. The rumors that came back were worse than anything I could have imagined. Little vials of different metallic powders, a notebook with neat handwritten notes about exposure and dosage, names, dates. Some of those names were my coworkers. Some were the ones who never came back. The official statements later said he'd been experimenting with various heavy metal compounds. Slow poisoning, organ damage over time, attempted murder. They never explained why. The company tried to move on. New paint, a new coffee machine, a shiny new fridge with a lock and keypad. Like that could fix what had happened. I still think about that kitchen more than I should. About all the mornings we laughed over coffee, while someone's lunch sat quietly in that fridge, already tainted. About how many times Uwe had probably stood in that same spot, vials hidden in his pocket, while we walked past him without a second thought. These days, I don't store my food anywhere that isn't within arm's reach. People ask why I'm weird about shared kitchens. I just tell them I had a bad experience once. I don't tell them the rest. I wake up at night convinced I can smell that metallic tang of something wrong in the air, like poisoned leftovers and steel. I'll sit up, heart racing, and remind myself I'm at home, that my food is in my own fridge, that no one else has the key. And then, just to be sure, I still get up and check. I work as a line cook in a small restaurant on the edge of a coastal town in the south of England. It's one of those places that tries to look fancier than it is. Dim lights, candles on the tables, handwritten menu on a chalkboard. But at the end of the day, it's still just a cramped kitchen, too much heat, and too many tickets on a busy night. I'd been there almost 2 years when this happened. By then, I knew every inch of that kitchen. Our kitchen was long and narrow. On one side, the line, grill, flat top, fryer, salamander. On the other side, prep tables, cutting boards, and the paths where finished plates went out to the servers. At the back, separated by a heavy plastic curtain, was the walk-in fridge and freezer. Just in front of that, squeezed into a corner, was a tiny staff break area. Really, just 2 stools, a kettle, and a microwave. The kitchen had no windows. Once the shutters were down in the dining room, there was no natural light anywhere. Normally, I wasn't the last one there. We closed at 11, and by midnight, everyone was usually out. But one Friday, our head chef's wife went into labor. He literally dropped his tongs on the floor at 9:30, yelled something about the baby, and ran out of the back door. That left me, the only other trained cook, running the line. The night was chaos. Orders piling up, servers running in and out, tickets stapled all over the hood. We managed, somehow. By 11:30, the last table had paid and left. By 12:15, the servers were gone too, laughing and clattering down the back stairs. Dishwash had finished and disappeared. Even the manager left early, saying something about needing sleep for the big Saturday shift. He tossed me the keys and said, "Lock up when you're done, just set the alarm." And suddenly, I was alone in the building. It was quiet in a way I wasn't used to. No shouting, no clatter of plates, no printer spitting out orders. I actually didn't mind at first. There's a certain peace in a dead kitchen. Clean surfaces, empty pans, floor still wet from being mopped. I put some music on my phone, low, and started my closing checklist. Scrub grill, clean fryer filters, wrap and label leftovers. Check walk-in temp, count stock, turn off all gas knobs. Simple. About 20 minutes into that, the front of house phone rang. The sound made me jump so hard I almost dropped the tray I was carrying. We almost never got calls that late. I hesitated, but it kept ringing, echoing down the hallway from the bar. Eventually, I sighed and went to get it. "Hello, Blue Anchor Restaurant," I said, trying to sound less tired than I was. Silence. For a second, I thought the line had dropped. Then a woman's voice said, very softly, "You're still open, yes?" She had a slight accent I couldn't place. European, maybe, not local, for sure. Sorry, we're closed for tonight," I said. "Kitchen's shutting down." Long pause. I could hear a faint noise in the background, like wind against the microphone. "Are you alone in the kitchen?" she asked. The way she said it made something cold creep up my spine. "Yeah," I said, before I could stop myself. Then I added, "Staff only though. We're shut." Another pause. I could hear her breathing, slow and controlled. "I used to work there," she said suddenly, "in that kitchen." I frowned. "Oh, you mean before my time? I've only been here a couple of years." "Yes," she said, "before your time." There was something off about her tone. Flat, too calm, like she was reciting a script. "Well, did you want to leave a message for the manager?" I offered. "No," she said. "I just wanted to hear the kitchen again." I hung up as politely as I could. I tried to shrug it off as some drunk or a prank. I went back to the kitchen, turned my music up a bit, and got on with the cleaning. 15 minutes later, the kitchen printer started up. Hearing that sound when the restaurant is empty at nearly 1 in the morning? Yeah, no thanks. I stared at it, genuinely thinking my overtired brain had just imagined it. But there it was, a single ticket, freshly printed, fluttering from the machine. I tore it off. Table 7. 2 mains. 1. Fish and chips, extra crispy, no peas. 2. Mushroom risotto, no onions. Weirdly normal. No spooky message. Just food orders. At 1 in the morning, from a till nobody was using. I went to the bar area. The till screen was dark. The chairs were still up on the tables. The front door was locked. The only light on in the whole front area was the little green glow from the emergency exit sign. I checked the back door. Still bolted. No sign of anyone else. Trying not to think about it too hard, I walked back into the kitchen and crumpled the ticket into a ball. I threw it in the bin and washed my hands again, mostly just to feel like I was doing something normal. 5 minutes later, the printer went crazy. Not just one ticket, a stream of them, shattering out, one after another. The sound so loud in the quiet kitchen, it made my teeth clench. I grabbed the whole ribbon of paper and ripped it free. There were at least 15 orders on it, all for the same table. Same 2 dishes, fish and chips, mushroom risotto, over and over. My heart was hammering now. "Very funny," I yelled, even though I knew no one could hear me. "Seriously, stop messing with the till." Silence. I tried to go back to work, but the air in the kitchen felt wrong. I pushed through the plastic curtain into the walk-in fridge. It was always colder than it needed to be in there. Racks of labeled containers, cling-wrap bowls, plastic tubs filled with prepped veg and sauces. The faint smell of herbs, raw onions, and cold metal. I checked the thermometer on the wall. 3 degrees Celsius. Perfect. Then, from outside in the kitchen, I heard it again. The ticket printer. "Come on," I whispered, my breath fogging in the cold. I stepped back out of the fridge and nearly slipped on the threshold. There were tickets everywhere. Dozens of them, maybe more, scattered on the counter, the floor. One fluttering down from where it had caught on the hood. All the same. Table 7. Fish and chips. Mushroom risotto. And then, at the end of the ribbon, a different one. Same table number. But instead of an order, just 3 words. Every part of me wanted to walk straight out of that kitchen, leave the lights on, and never come back. But something else, stubbornness, curiosity, I don't know, pushed me toward the dish pit. The sink area was at the far end, just before the walk-in. Big steel basins, the industrial sprayer hanging limp on its hook. The last pot I'd washed sat upside down on the drying rack. The sink itself was empty, at first. Then I saw it, right at the back of the basin, under the lip, where the sprayer hose looped around. There was a dark line, a hairline crack I'd never noticed before. As I leaned in, a drip of brownish water slid out of it and ran down into the drain. It smelled wrong, not like normal kitchen gunk, not like old food, more metallic, almost like blood. I grabbed the edge of the basin and pulled up. A whole metal sink unit shifted. Not much, just a centimeter or 2, but enough to reveal the gap behind it, enough to let the smell out properly. It hit me like a wall. Rot. Damp. Something that had been trapped a long time in a dark, wet space. I gagged, stumbling back, hand over my mouth. I grabbed a torch and shone it down into the gap between the back of the sink unit and the tiled wall. There was something there. At first, I thought it was just a mass of old cloth. Someone's lost jacket, maybe, stuffed back there by a lazy plumber. But as the light adjusted, the shapes made more sense. Fabric, bone, the curve of a shoulder, the stub of what must have been an arm, now mostly collapsed in on itself. A human body, wedged behind the sink, half mummified by the cold and the damp. I screamed. I dropped the torch, ran straight through the kitchen, and nearly ripped the back door off its hinges getting outside. It took me a full 5 minutes of shaking in the alley before I could force myself to call the police. The rest of it is a blur. Lights, questions, my manager being called out of bed, hair a mess, face gray, blue tape going up across the back entrance. They identified her a week later. She'd worked there before I started, a prep cook who'd quit suddenly and never came back. They think she slipped, hit her head, and fell into that gap while cleaning during a deep clean. The sink had been bolted back into place over the years, sealing her in. The smell was blamed on drains. The damp behind the wall was a plumbing issue. The thing that still bothers me most isn't that she died there, it's the tickets. The police said the printer glitches were probably a wiring fault. But those orders weren't random characters. They were real dishes. And then, check the sink. These days I never ignore a strange smell in a kitchen. Someone might be trying to tell you something. Last year, I decided to take a solo trip to Portugal. I just burned out hard at my job, and my therapist suggested I get away for a bit. Cheap flights, nice weather, beautiful old cities. It sounded perfect. I booked a small holiday apartment in Lisbon through one of those rental apps. The photos showed a cozy little place on the top floor of an old building. White walls, terracotta tiles, a tiny balcony, and a fully equipped vintage kitchen, whatever that meant. When I arrived, the place was exactly like the pictures, almost. The living room was bright and airy, with a sagging couch and a bookshelf full of random paperbacks in Portuguese. The bedroom was small, but clean. The bathroom smelled faintly of bleach. All normal. The kitchen, though, the kitchen felt different. It was a narrow, galley-style room with a window at the far end that overlooked a jumble of red roofs. The counter was made of worn marble, stained from decades of use. There was an old gas stove with metal burners, a crooked faucet over a deep sink, and cabinets painted a dull, chipped blue. The floor tiles were what caught my eye first. They were patterned, blue and white geometric designs with little floral shapes. Pretty at a glance, but the more I looked, the more wrong they felt. The pattern didn't repeat correctly. Some tiles were rotated the wrong way, like whoever laid them either didn't care or was deliberately trying to create a subtle sense of unease. I laughed it off. I was tired, jet-lagged, overthinking things. The first night, I cooked pasta. The gas stove took forever to light. I had to hold the knob down and click the lighter a dozen times before the flame caught, whooshing up bright blue. The smell of gas hung in the air a bit longer than I liked. I ate at the little table by the window, listening to distant music and laughter drifting up from the street. It was nice, peaceful. For the first time in months, I felt okay. That didn't last. Around 3 a.m., I woke up needing water. The apartment was silent, except for the faint hum of a fridge somewhere. I stumbled out of bed and into the kitchen. The smell hit me first. Gas, not strong, not overpowering, but definitely there. A faint, sweet chemical smell that made the back of my throat itch. I froze, suddenly wide awake. The stove knobs were all in the off position. I checked them twice, then 3 times. All off. I opened the window, coughed, stood there for a while, letting the cool night air swirl in. Eventually, the smell faded. I told myself the old stove probably leaked a bit. Old building, old pipes. I turned on the tap, drank from my cupped hands, and went back to bed. The second night, it got stranger. I'd spent the day walking up and down Lisbon's hills, and by the time I got back, my legs felt like jelly. I showered, boiled some eggs in the kitchen, and ate standing up, too tired to even sit at the table. As I was washing my plate, I heard something from behind me, a soft clink, like metal on ceramic. I turned around, dish still in my hands. One of the burners on the stove was slightly out of place. I hadn't touched it. I'd only used the back burner for the pot. Now the front left burner ring was sitting just a little crooked. I told myself it must have been like that already. I was exhausted. Not exactly the most reliable witness. That night, I woke up again around 3 a.m. Same smell. Gas. This time it was stronger. I got out of bed, heart already pounding. When I stepped into the kitchen, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. One of the stove knobs was turned halfway on. Not enough to ignite anything. Just enough to let gas leak out, slowly. I rushed over and shut it off, then opened the window all the way, feeling suddenly very, very alone. I checked the door to the apartment. Still locked. The tiny deadbolt was in place. I barely slept after that. Kept imagining myself never waking up. The story of the dumb tourist who gassed themselves in a holiday rental. The next morning, I messaged the host through the app, keeping my tone polite. Hi, I think the gas stove might have a leak. Twice now, I've smelled gas in the night and found a knob slightly turned. Could you maybe have someone check it? She responded an hour later. Hola, the stove is old but safe. You must have bumped the knob without noticing. Please just be careful. I stared at the smiley face for a good minute, then threw my phone on the bed. That evening, I decided I wasn't going to use the stove anymore. I grabbed some takeaway, ate it standing at the window again, and left the stove untouched. Before bed, I did something I probably should have done earlier. I took a photo of the stove. All 4 knobs, all 4 burners, everything clearly in the off position. Time-stamped on my phone. I went to bed. I didn't sleep long. A noise woke me this time. Not the smell, a sharp, deliberate click from the kitchen. I lay there, staring at the dark ceiling, my heart pounding. For a full minute, I tried to convince myself it was the building settling, or a neighbor, or anything else. Then I smelled it. Gas. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked slowly down the short hallway. The kitchen doorway yawned in front of me, the patterned tiles on the floor swallowing the weak beam of light. The gas smell was strong, too strong. I raised my phone, its light swinging across the counter, the sink, the stove. One of the knobs was fully turned on. A faint hiss filled the air. My hand shook as I reached out and twisted it off. I flung the window open so fast, it banged against the exterior wall, making me jump. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked slowly down the short hallway. The kitchen doorway yawned in front of me, the patterned tiles on the floor swallowing the weak beam of light. The gas smell was strong, too strong. I raised my phone, its light swinging across the counter, the sink, the stove. One of the knobs was fully turned on. A faint hiss filled the air. My hand shook as I reached out and twisted it off. I flung the window open so fast, it banged against the exterior wall, making me jump. I stood there gasping, half from the fumes and half from pure adrenaline. That's when I remembered the photo. I fumbled my phone open, pulled up the picture from earlier. 4 knobs, all off, time-stamped 22:11. I checked the current time, 3:07. I looked back at the stove, all off now. But 5 minutes earlier, one had been fully open. There was no one else in that apartment. No one had come through the locked door. There was no way for anyone to get in from outside. The window opened to a sheer drop. I didn't go back to bed. I sat at the tiny kitchen table until sunrise, my back to the wall, watching that stove like it might start turning itself on again in front of me. The next day, I packed my bags and left. I lied to the host and said a family emergency had come up and I had to cut my trip short. She sent a sad face emoji and a reminder to leave a review. I didn't mention the gas in the review. A few weeks after I got home, though, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd dodged something I didn't fully understand. I looked up the street name on the booking and started searching in Portuguese with help from Google Translate. It didn't take long to find it. An old local news article from years ago. There had been a fire in that same building. An elderly woman had died in her sleep when a gas leak ignited and half the top floor went up in flames. The article mentioned a faulty stove left partially open. The line that stuck with me most was a quote from the fire chief. Neighbors said they often smelled gas at night, but the tenant refused help and insisted everything was fine. I don't know what was happening in that kitchen with me. Maybe it was faulty hardware. Maybe I really was bumping knobs without realizing it. Maybe the host had cut corners when fixing the gas lines after the fire. Or maybe someone who never got a chance to wake up was making sure I did. All I know is I'll never stay in a vintage kitchen again.